Hey, what's up, everybody? I am super excited about this episode. This is going to be a unique episode, something that really we almost never talk about. And it's so important because there's a visionary side of leadership and being the actual founder, but there's also the employee side of leadership. And I don't do this alone. I've got 6 full-time team members in addition to other preferred vendors and people who help us build. And this episode is dedicated to every single one of you. Becoming a leader, it's not just a promotion. We're talking about a shift in mindset, responsibility, and decision making, but we're also talking about an opportunity that has led to people like Steve Ballmer, who is the number 30 employee at Microsoft, who's now worth $120 billion. Or Eric Schmidt, same thing with Google. He was an early executive. He's worth 20 billion. Guys, there's so much value in being able to be the leader who helps support the visionaries who are running things. And oftentimes we forget, we overlook that opportunity. I've got Rich Ashton, who's a legend of leadership, and he knows all about this. He's been in the trenches on this for decades. So, Rich, thanks so much for joining me today on Vision Pros Live.
No, I'm happy to be here. I can't wait for the conversation.
I love it. Well, we're gonna dive right into practical insights. That way, those of you who are in this early are going to benefit. And of course, we're going to get deeper and deeper into the ingredients into baking this cake so that you can also have phenomenal visions and also move your lives forward as visionary leaders in the employee seat as well. So I would encourage every visionary in this, let your teams listen to this. Let them get inspired by what Rich is up to so that they can also see the path towards greatness and helping you build an amazing vision. So, Rich, let's dive right in. What are some of the practical insights on how employees can successfully transition to leadership that you want to start with?
I think the very first thing that we have done successfully is to identify why people have not moved forward in their leadership path. In some cases, they haven't thought of themselves as leaders. In other cases, they carry emotional baggage. Maybe they had a tough upbringing and they can't get past some of those things. Some are fearful. Some are just scared of stepping out there and making those decisions. Some lack just that basic accountability piece. Some are poor communicators and don't recognize just how important communication is in leadership. So once we can establish what that ceiling is, then we work very, very closely with individual employees and try to move them through those ceilings.
Well, I love that. My friends, I mentioned 2 tech companies, but we can look at all blue collar companies and see story after story of people who went on to do amazing things. In fact, the early UPS drivers, they had a blue collar stock plan, and they're all the people who were on that and stayed with it are now worth at least $3 million. So
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities. This is not just about the tech gurus or people who are in love with podcasting. This is for your everyday worker who may want to think about, well, how do I get into leadership and what's there? And so let's dive in a little bit to the common challenges that new leaders may face. That way we can begin with the end in mind a bit. So somebody who might get down that road, what are some of the common challenges that new leaders face in the organizations you've worked with, Rich?
The greatest one and the hardest one to overcome is just fear of stepping out, fear of that. I've always thought that the frontline leader, the very first, the supervisor, for instance, who came out of the pack of employees and moved into a different role, I think that's the hardest transition because yesterday he was just one of the guys. Today he's telling them what to do. And so I find that that particular transition is the one that a lot of people just never get over. It's just not comfortable to be the boss for them because they never thought of themselves as being the boss. And I would say that we've had a greater failure rate in training people at that level than we have any other.
Wow, that's interesting. And I'll juxtaposition that with one of the other great challenges that exists related to it, but often overlooked. And that would be ego. Right. So sometimes the leader receives that leadership role, and next thing you know, we become like the tyrant. Right. And we want to control everything and everybody. And I would say that if that's the feeling, like, oh my gosh, I'm the leader. Now I get to make all the decisions and I'm going to be the authority who tells people what to do. There's an inferiority complex that's starting to come out. If you don't know what that is, you just Google it or look on an AI platform. What's an inferiority complex? And give me an assessment. Do I have one? It might be a fun little. I had an inferiority complex as a leader, and as part of that, the truth is, you're right, Rich. That goes back to fear. Right, the overcompensation aspect of now I need to control. I need to tell people what to do. that's not going to lead to the type of leadership that creates a culture that's going to thrive long term and enjoy the process, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's true. We've really only had one major case of that. We've had some minor cases, but one major promotion resulted in that, and I was shocked because the employee had worked with us for nearly 20 years before he moved into a significant managerial role, and he just flipped the switch on him. And it was horrible to watch. He became a different person. We ultimately had to cut him loose because
Mm,
we couldn't get him back in the fold. I will say that one of the things that I really believe in is building a solid, transparent, ethical culture in whatever business it is that I have been in. And I think all of our people have been managed that way. They've been managed with humility and transparency and with a real personal connection. So the likelihood that we're going to cultivate that ego stuff in our business is just really not much of a problem. I mean, I said we had the one major failure, but it really only one in all these years. And I think it's because we manage them the way we want them to manage other people, and so they at least have a model for that.
that's awesome. That reminds me a lot of what I've learned about the Chick-fil-A culture, and just how careful they are on the front end so they don't end up running into severe challenges like that on the back end. And slow is smooth, and smooth becomes fast. So I really like that. The
We start
Go ahead.
talking about culture, and our culture is unique. We start talking about it in the interview. By the time a prospective employee has heard it from three different people in different words, they understand that we mean it, and then we reinforce it every single day in the company. And because we're a small company, it's easy to do that. We're not talking about thousands of employees where it gets more and more difficult. But in a small business, which is what I really love about small business, you can make sure that your culture runs from top to bottom, and it's important that it be that way.
Absolutely. So let's try to put a definition on effective leadership in growing organizations. How would you define effective leadership?
Effective leadership is the ability to influence people, and you hopefully you're influencing them in a positive direction toward common goals. We have a very clear understanding of who we are as a company. Simon Sinek's book "Start with Why" it wasn't influential in that it helped us distill our thoughts into a single sentence, and we're very clear with all of our people about that. If a leader tries to lead outside that framework, he or she will have no success within our organization. So the ability to communicate obviously is an enhancement toward being able to lead, and so we work with people on communication a lot.
See, I really appreciate that. I've got to own my own demons on this. This is something that I was probably one of those types of leaders that you guys would have kicked out in the organization. I've got that. Taylor Welch calls it the superstar effect. And the problem with having too many superstars on a team is that it just creates drama.
Mhm.
Right. And so you don't end up with consistency and teamwork. You end up with too many egos in the room. And I hope I've continued to work towards figuring out how do I not guide my team with that. But as you said, effective leadership is the ability to influence. And then you added the obviously as an enhancement. Um, Sometimes we miss that though as leaders. Sometimes the ability to influence, and I'm going to pick on a gentleman called Grant Cardone. I was watching a sales training of Grant a while back, and it was after I'd already made the transition to I really don't sit well with how this guy leads. Right. It might work for some people, but for organizations who have a desire to create a more holistic culture and a longer average order value, these are elements that we can learn from to say, you know what, I want to make sure we don't move that direction. In this particular training, he was in a room of over 100 people, maybe 200, teaching sales, and he says, "All right, I'll show you. Let me just do a role like a real scenario right now. I'm going to call somebody." And so he calls somebody up, and he gets this person to absolutely submit as a subordinate to buy from him, right? And he's kind of laughing, he's kind of muting while he's talking to this guy, talking to the room, like, look, you can see how I've convinced him to do this, that, and the other, and he's going to follow because of watch what happens. And anyway, he gets this guy to close, if you will, and the room goes wild about the experience. I would say the less intuitive leaders, but there was also a slight golf clap, like I have to clap because I'm here moment.
Mhm.
And people like me who watch that call know that that person told Grant exactly what he wanted to hear. He couldn't wait to get off the phone. He wasn't going to be rude though. And he told Grant yes, even though I guarantee you that person did not buy from him
Yeah.
and now never will.
Yep.
Along with other people like myself who knew that this guy just bullied the heck out of somebody and didn't actually win any real influence. The only influence he got was tricking and manipulating people who are I guess Kool-Aid drinking enough to say, oh wow, that's cool, I want to be able to do that too to people, I guess. But I want to hone in on that just a little bit, because how do we make sure that when we are exercising our ability to influence, Rich, that we're doing so in a way that drives holistic results, because that type of influence just does not bode well with me.
Well, let me share a personal story, if you don't mind, about that.
Please.
So I was raised by an authoritarian leader. My dad was successful, but he was a bully,
Is your
and
dad's name Jack by chance? Okay.
in common. um, so I think, most young men, if they have a successful father, kind of grow up mimicking how he does things. And I didn't have any reason.
Absolutely.
I didn't have any reason not to. Although as his child, it was hard on me. But I kind of separated, being the kid and then being a leader on my own. So when I entered the business world, I just copied his style, and I was an authoritarian leader, and I was in a really good spot and in a good system, and I got away with it for a long time. But when I had my own business and we faced difficulties, I was in my mid 40s, and I had had a fast start to my career. I started to see other entrepreneurial friends who were passing me by, and I was kind of stagnant. And I took a look at them and said, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And I basically was an arrogant jerk at that stage of my life. And as with most arrogant jerks, it just wasn't working. And so a combination of my entrepreneurial friends, who were, and many of them were very successful and facing the exact same situations that I was, they were handling them different. They were being successful. I was not. And then my wife, who is a relationship rock star, and has no interest in business, I finally looked at her and said, she's doing something that I'm not doing, because I have very few relationships. She's got a relationship with everybody she ever met. And I began to watch her. And she would certainly never admit to mentoring me, but she's had a phenomenal influence on me. I became far more
Wow.
relational, reconnected with my faith around the age 50, and everything began to click again. So
Wow.
that bully as a leader, I'm very familiar with that style, and I'm very, very glad that I am no longer that.
Man, that's why I called you the OG when you first came in and we met the other day. You are a legend, Rich, and you've lived both sides of this, and that's so helpful from an empathy standpoint. I'm not recommending that, guys. If you haven't been an arrogant jerk, go be no. Like, you're very fortunate. Don't go through that. But I'm 38, Rich, and I'm looking at this going, oh man, I hope that I'm not 45 going, crap, I'm still an arrogant jerk. Like, I hope I figured that out, and I'm moving.
Well, you're hiding it well. You don't come across as an arrogant jerk.
Well, it depends on the team member, and the situation, Rich. That can I certainly have. I have such a strong desire to be able to help millions and billions with this process, and the real sacred nature of my role as a visionary. And this is like I've got a lot to do to become more diplomatic, to understand people's perspectives more on where they're at, and there's leadership skills that I also want to develop and help my team develop. And so this really is one of the most important episodes that we could possibly have for myself as well as for my team members. And so this reality of looking, and I love that you got to learn that from your wife. I went through a divorce, didn't get to learn it in that scenario, but not from her. Great woman, wonderful mother to my children, grateful for her. But the person who I looked at in almost the exact same parallel scenario, I was about 28. It was Jake Larson of Video Power Marketing. And I looked at his life and my life, and we had been mission companions at 19, 20 years old. And so I got to watch him for 10 years and see the same thing that you got to see. I was like, man, his relationships are phenomenal. He's charismatic. People love him who work with him and who follow him. He's like, what is it that, what am I missing? Why am I not able to have the same type of depths of relationships, and have the same type of leadership? And I started to realize, like, you know what? I'm actually a really bad leader. I need to figure this out. I need to dedicate more time to it. And so since then, for the last 10 years, I've been pretty obsessed with the idea that I've got to get a hang on this. And visionaries, this is one of the greatest things that you can do. Also, those of you who are team members. So we're going to come right back. We're actually going to dive into Rich's treasure chest of wisdom on this. We're going to talk about how to develop leadership skills within our teams, how to empower those team members. One, again, share this video, let them see what Rich is going to put down. We'll look at the common mistakes a little bit deeper into what new leaders run into. Key traits of effective small business leaders, by the way, that applies to the big businesses as well. And how to support employees as they step into leadership roles. I think that's one of the most important keys for all of us as visionaries and for you as a growing leader. If you're about to step into that role as an employee, learn what support you need, because then you can take that to your leaders and say, hey, if I'm going to succeed in this role, I'm really going to need these things. We're going to take a quick break for a drink of water. We'll be right back and we'll dive in. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Hey guys, welcome into Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business, and I'm super excited to have the legend Rich Ashton in the house today. This guy has decades of leadership experience. This is one of our most unique episodes because it's driven towards teams and team members that want to help visionaries build amazing visions. And so before I bring him back on, I also want to give you guys all access to some tools that apply to the exact same scenarios. We've got AI Mavericks up here with Scott Simpson and Austin Armstrong. These are very, very big leaders in the world. They've got, I don't know, Austin's got over 2 million followers. And these are people who are looking at the advanced layers of AI, like most individuals, but they're also individuals that I trust from an integrity standpoint. I've seen how well they serve their audiences. That's why I pay to be a member of their program. They do not pay for that sponsorship spot. I put it there because I put tools there that I know that you can build with and learn from. And so if you're on the cutting edge or want to be for AI, follow these gentlemen. We have the AI marketplace at First Class Business as well. You could say that we don't focus on the cutting edge. What we're really focused on is the foundational development necessary to use AI to be productive and profitable, not to create fun images with bananas. I don't know how that's, no, I'm kidding. It's fun to do, but my friends, what's more fun in business is understanding, again, how to be profitable. This helps you as a professional translate your skills of what things have you done that are AI related that you may not be aware of, and realize that you, in fact, are exactly what AI needs for AI to succeed. And it helps you revamp your resume, revamp your LinkedIn, and also learn how to interview for the jobs of the future. If you feel like AI is about to undercut you, it's not. You're being handed a chainsaw in a world of lumberjacks using an axe. I highly recommend using these tools. If you can't afford to join it, then we also have a grant program so you can join for free. We don't want anybody to be left behind in the world of AI. There's also the business bottlenecks checklist that you run into if you're a business owner. There's so many promises out there of what it can do for you. AI is not ready to do most of the things that people are saying it does. Look no further than companies like Ring Central that have really crappy customer support now because they prematurely put AI into place thinking it was going to help. They did not work through the systems necessary in order to improve their experience for their customers. So we don't want to fall into that trap. We want to build what is effective and efficient at driving productivity and profitability for and with your brands. And we have a community process that's involved in this. In fact, 2 p.m. today, Central. If you join us in there, you'll be part of what we call the AI exchange, so that we can all exchange ideas on how to use this for our better good. Then there's the water project, my friends. The water project is something that I am not a part of, but we do contribute to every month, because I've never been thirsty in my life. When this opportunity came across my plate, I didn't really get it and appreciate and understand it until I started to look at the depth and realize these children have to go find water for their communities oftentimes, or for their homes. They don't know the source, they don't know the quality of the water. And it made me start to realize, like, dang, we should really eradicate this challenge that exists in the world. What's also so inspiring to me is you'll see a picture here of these kids. They celebrate water like my kids celebrate Christmas Day. We have the opportunity to help with that. So even if you don't have the ability to fund a project and see the results of it, maybe you have the opportunity to just speak about this with a friend or family member over dinner. That's what I would ask, is just spread the word. You never know. You might spread the word to somebody who decides to fund 1, 2, or 10,000 of these villages and help us eliminate the challenge of those who don't have access to the most critical resource on the planet. So along with oxygen, let's say. Argue with me about that in the comments. It'd be fun. My friends, we got 8 billion people to help in this world. If there's another cause that draws your heart in and your attention, please leave a comment with that cause. I would love to see it. I will take a look at any cause that people put in there and see what we can do to support the process. And again, we can all band together to help the people who need it most. So without further ado, we're going to go back to helping every single one of you. I'll bring Rich back on. Rich, it's a pleasure to have you here on Vision Pros Live and to talk about leadership, one of the other great essential elements of human survival and humans' ability to thrive.
Well, this is an interesting show. Your approach is different, and I'm enjoying it.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. I hope so. And those of you who are listening in, again, I appreciate Rich's humility and the depth of what he's been able to do. He's got decades of experience on us. So take notes as best you can. Share this with friends, family, team members, people who are in a position to where they might value what types of depths of benefits come with being a leader. So as we talk about the benefits, let's dive right in again, Mitch, to Rich, to how to develop leadership skills within our team. I'm going to shut up for a while now. How do we develop leadership skills within our team?
In our company, in my experience, and there's a million different ways to lead. We talked about the authoritarian style. This is not the only way to lead, but it is the way in small companies that it really, really works. And that is, number one, it starts with connecting with people. It's one thing to know the people that you work with, know their name, maybe know their birthday, their work anniversary, but to know them and what makes them tick is the foundation of leadership. If I know you, if I know your spouse, if I know your kids' names, if I've been to a game or if I've been to your dad's funeral, my ability to interact with you is totally different. And so I want to know everybody in my life in a little bit different way. As I go around the company in the morning, I'm going to have a conversation with everyone who is there, and I'm going to have a different conversation with everyone. So you know that when Rich comes by your desk, he's not going to ask you how your weekend was. He's going to ask you how your daughter did in the music competition or how your son's football game went. And it just makes a tremendous difference, because as a leader, you don't just have fun conversations. You have difficult conversations at times.
Right.
If I am transparent, if I am humble, if I have told them about my failures, if they know a little bit about my background and the warts on my life, when I talk to them about the reason that they didn't get the promotion that was just announced, but that they aren't shut out, that here's the roadmap for how they can go forward, they start out with great disappointment and they leave going, you know what, there's a way. He gave me the 3 things that I need to do to go forward. I just find that if I want to empower people, it all starts with a relationship with people. Wow. Some people will let you in, some people won't. In a small company, HR won't tell you can't do it. In a large company, HR may stop some of that. But it's been one of the joys of my life to know the people with whom I work and share the great moments and share the sad moments. But like I said, when it comes time for us to have a difficult conversation, if they believe that I'm trustworthy, those conversations are so much easier and so much more productive. The elements that we teach in leadership are proactivity, especially accountability. And a lot of the accountability piece for me came through the book Extreme Ownership, which has been read by most everybody. It's one of the best books on leadership ever, and because it's so understandable. and I go back to extreme ownership on a regular basis and reread parts of chapters just to refresh my memory. And we encourage our people to do the same thing. We taught the extreme ownership book to most of our employees several years ago, and found an improvement in their understanding of accountability. Um,
Wow.
one of the overlooked things in particularly low level developing low level leaders is the quest for knowledge, the pursuit of intellectual curiosity. I was really lucky early in my career. My first boss, who was a 23-year-old Harvard MBA with an undergrad from well, I forget now. Anyway, really
Mhm.
strong undergrad, and he's just a really smart guy. And he pulled me aside after a few days and said, "Rich, you don't know very much about what we're doing here." And I said, "Unfortunately, you're right." And he said, You're a smart enough guy. You can fill that gap if you will begin to read on a regular basis." And he said, "I want you to read the Wall Street Journal every day, and I want you to read business periodicals." At that time, they were printed; you couldn't get them online. I want you to read 5 a week. And so I was reading Business Week and Barron's and Forbes, and he was right. I started to gain knowledge. Well, I wasn't much of a reader up to that point, but I was smart enough to listen to him, and that began a career of reading for me. I read or listen to podcasts or audiobooks or whatever about an hour and a half every day, and I have for the last 52 years. The amount of information that is available, not all of which is worth having, but when
Right.
you read on a variety of topics, when you read from a variety of viewpoints, you can't help but be a better leader. Number one, you're going to understand business better, but you're also going to understand people, why they think the way they do, why they do what they do, why they say the things they do, why they make the mistakes. And if leadership is basically influence, communication and communicating your knowledge is one of the most effective ways to influence people. So those are the foundations of what we teach. But it all starts with empowering people, giving them an idea that they can be more than they ever thought they could be, and then helping them get there.
Wow. Absolutely. And there's so much value in everything that you just shared. I'm trying to organize the path I want to take with it. And my friends, I hope you do the same thing. Meditate on these realities. What can you learn and pick up? I'm going to recap some of it. So you just referred to what has often been called the information age. And I believe that we are now in the curation age. And so it's easier to figure out what we want to spend our time with and what we need to spend our time with. We've now got tools like AI, access to mentors worldwide to be able to help us do that. You just guided us to extreme ownership. I'll be honest, I actually haven't read the book as many times as it's been recommended on this show by other leaders. It's one that I would love to get into. And with those of you listening in, if you're overwhelmed by the amount of information that you ultimately feel like I need to consume, that's another area to go back to AI and do something like, you know what? Give me a breakdown of the extreme ownership principles based on what you know about me, that I can apply, over the course of 1 hour per day leading into quarter 3, right? That's something I can do with this type of information these days. It doesn't eliminate my desire to usually listen to the book. I'm a big fan of Audible.
Me too.
And so I'll be putting that on my list. I've got a few books on leadership that prior to you saying that, Rich, you're like, no, I have to read these books first. But knowing who you are and the caliber of leader you are and how dedicated you've made you've got thousands of books to choose from based on all the studies that you've done. The fact that you've chosen that one tells me like, okay, Jackson, put down your immature booty, and your immature brain and listen to what Rich is saying. Pick this up. My friends, one of those books for me is Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Every single team member of mine has to read that book before they're able to move towards being an executive on our team. We've got to read that book. It's a Patrick Lencioni is a legend for leadership, and I see Rich nodding along to that. So the accountability aspect's big for me. I'm grateful for Chris Whitehead of the Iconic podcast as well. I asked him in a private message about this, or in a community message, I think, where we were talking about accountability. And I'm a nut for accountability, but I've often driven it from a position that makes people uncomfortable, even though the 1 minute manager also does a good job of helping us with the idea of accountability. And Chris basically said, Jackson, just, it was like the only reason that you ever really need to hold somebody accountable is if they're not being accountable to your core values of your company. And if you can tie it back to that, the core values itself, as you talk about it, then it makes it really easy to move towards accountability. It was like an invisible wall or chain just melted away. And I was like, oh wow. I was like, this is neat. This does make a lot of sense. So that's also one little trick for accountability as you guys get ready to lean in. It is so important for us to understand how to be accountable to the actions that we need to take to be productive and profitable, and purposeful in our relationships too. And then you talked about proactivity. That's something that we could dive into deeper, but I want to go back to what you said about connecting with people, Rich, because it immediately reminded me of some of my past sins in relation to leadership, and how you said, yes, it's one thing to learn about the birthdays, the anniversary, know the birthdays, the anniversaries, the spouse, the kids, etc. I ended up firing 3 of the first people that I had work with me from a digital standpoint because their projects were bad. I looked back at the work and realized that my instructions were bad. And then I tried something new. Instead of just focusing on the work, I asked the next person what their birthday was, what their favorite holiday was, and if they wanted to be a designer for the rest of their life or they had other ambitions. And this guy wanted to be an AI specialist. This was back in like 2011. I didn't even know what that was. But I started to research it, realized I knew some people that I could connect him to. And that guy, just by asking those simple questions, crushed through that project with precision. He was engaged. He was passionate about it. And I, all of a sudden, had this really, really nasty anchor in my gut that said, dang, I've been treating people, human beings, like a pair of shoes from Payless on this Fiverr website. I haven't cared about them. I just want the best reviews, the best work, the cheapest, fastest production. Like, that's borderline slavery, or at least virtual abuse instead of virtual assistance. And I realized, like, okay, if I want to be a better business owner, I need to care about the people who are working with me. But you just took that connection level to an entirely new level that, as you said, in bigger environments, it could lead to HR fouls. In my environment, I'm still like, okay, I love my team members. We do engage, but I do have certain fears on that, Rich, where I'm like, okay, what happens if I put myself in a position where I care so much that they ask for things I can't fulfill on? And now or now I forget the birthday. And it's like, oh boy. And I've got over 100 family members. It's hard to keep up with birthdays. Or they get into a bind and they need some support or help and need a bonus. And so we've created some systems to help with those realities too, so that there are boundaries and other people to protect me from being able to make decisions by myself. But I guess I'd like to know a little bit more wisdom behind the scenes on that, Rich. There's a certain level of risk that comes with that level of vulnerability and intimacy. Is there a secret sauce or some type of principle that helps you walk that line in a sacred way that still empowers a relationship without putting yourself in danger?
There may be a secret sauce. I probably don't know what it is. I think it's individual because people connect at different levels. People would not call me a soft touch or particularly compassionate even. I think at least my wife doesn't think I am. But I intentionally leave the relationships at the office unless I'm at one of their kids' games or some social event. We're all there. I don't make those relationships into personal friendships. We're friends in the office and we're closer than they are at most companies, but I'm not comfortable with going further than that. And I think it's dangerous. And I've watched that blow up on people. So that's my personal rule is we can meet outside, we can have dinner, but we're not going to be buddies. Right. And I think that's probably the safest way to put it.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. And I love what you said. It does come down to an individual reality on that. And so perhaps the relationships at Chick-fil-A are warmer than the relationships at Hot Topic would be my guess. Right. Two very different
And
brands.
you mentioned them having difficult conversations, or them asking for more than they should ask for. I have had people cross that line, but that goes back to that trust and transparency issue for me. When I've had those difficult conversations, I can't remember of one that did not go well. And I just kind of take them through, and I think that's probably more than we should do as a company, or more than I should do as an individual. And let's talk about it. And I don't think I've ever had anybody react badly to that kind of transparency, but you have to build the trust first.
Right. We've also put in place at First Class Business what I call a governing body. And the governing body, it's actually me, Cynthia, Maria Victoria, and Zach. And so there's four of us. And if we're ever outvoted 3-1 on an issue, doesn't matter who made the vote, then we move forward. And in their case, we don't even need to include Zach most of the time. If Cynthia and Maria Victoria outvote me, we talked about this yesterday, then I'm 99% of the time going to lean in on their side. If for whatever reason I need another opinion, Zach can come in. And if we're divided 2-2, then the four of us decide who's going to be the intermediate, who's going to be the tiebreaker that exists within the rest of our establishment. And that does help me in these scenarios. We've had scenarios where people need extra budget because they have a life-threatening operation coming up, and like, okay, well, I can't make that decision by myself, but we can talk about that, I'll talk about it with the governing body, and we'll decide what makes sense from there, and what's possible. But I just want you to know, it's not because I don't care. It's because I don't have the authority to make this decision by myself.
Right. I think that's a good safeguard. I like that.
Yeah, it definitely does help a lot. So you guys can figure out, how do you build your own governing bodies for your vision, and who helps lead that. It helps protect me from the idea of that. There's an old quote, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't want to be corrupted. Like, that scares me. I don't want that. So I've seen it too many times with entrepreneurs. All right. Key traits of effective small business leaders. So somebody who wants to become a leader, what are the traits that they can start exercising to become effective as a small business leader?
I can't overemphasize that pursuit of knowledge. And I think they have to get in touch with the fact that you're not hiding anything from anybody. If you're a procrastinator, if you don't hold yourself accountable, everybody around you knows that. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, if you tolerate, there's a line in extreme ownership. It isn't what you tolerate. I mean, it isn't what you preach. It's what you tolerate. And that's a pretty succinct summary of a lot of leadership traits. If you allow employee A to get away with something that you don't want the team to do, and you said there's a rule against it, you're not just going to lose employee A. You're going to lose employee B and C and D. And the fact that the sooner that you recognize that, the better off you're going to be. The other, I didn't mention it earlier when I was listing off traits, but the difference between being a supportive leader and being an enabler is really, really critical. And I think in this day and time, we see a lot more enablers trying to be supporters, but they wind up being enablers. There is a line beyond which support should not go. And I'm not a big believer in rules. I believe that you put as many rules as you have to and no more. But I believe that if you put a rule in place, you enforce it 100% of the time. And yes. So people don't get to pick and choose how they work for you. And so all of those, kind of all go together with the communication piece. You mentioned delegation earlier. Delegation is a lost art. I'm not sure it was ever a found art, but it is. It's a missing art, and yet delegation is not very difficult. You mentioned that you weren't clear on your expectations. Well, that's number one. What is it I expect from you? When do I expect it? And then your responsibility is to tell me when you run up against an obstacle. Don't wait until deadline day. Don't wait until the night before. Tell me along the way. I'll help you. I'll keep you steered in the right direction. But I'm also going to come to you. If the project is due on Thursday, I'm going to check in with you on Monday or Tuesday and just say, how are you doing? Because I want you to succeed when I delegate a project to you. One of the beauties of
Mm.
delegation is that it's a great training tool. We find out an
Yes.
awful lot about the person we delegated something to. And, it isn't necessary in my mind for them to get it 100% right. If they
Oh
get
no.
80% of it, then we have something to build on. And then we can delegate a bigger project the next time. But almost
Yes.
all delegation fails because the delegator did a bad job, not because the
Correct.
person being delegated to did a bad job.
It is so sad how many founders say, well, why would I have somebody else do this? I can do it better.
Sure.
You have 3,000 other things to do with your time. Like let it go. They don't need to be better than you at what's happening. And they do need the permission to fail. You didn't get there automatically. And if you did, your life's probably going to struggle because you're not going to be able to relate to the people who have to learn things the real way in the world. And so I love that you brought all that up. Pursuit of knowledge, ultimately, that is the grand secret principle that Rich just talked about, that he's dedicated ultimately his life to and his modern presence to, that we can all tap into and realize, okay, that's also the answer for how do we support employees as they step into leadership roles. One, we help them understand and value the pursuit of knowledge. What about why leadership development requires more than technical skills? Right. We didn't even talk about technical skills very much today, my friends. That should be sign enough for you, that it's not about the technicalities. It's about understanding the principles behind it. Our number one rule at First Class Business, and we also, I don't think we have a second rule. I can make one up real fast, but the number one rule is we do what is best for those that we serve in all circumstances. That's it. Everything goes around that. So number two, if there had to be one, it would be abide by our virtues, like build up your connection to our virtues. And really, number one encompasses that, because if you're going to serve people as best you can, then that means that we've got to become more loving, more patient, more persistent, more consistent, more reliable. Right? Those are our 5 values and virtues. And so it's easy for me to see team members that are dedicating themselves to building those attributes, because I've studied those attributes for most of my life, at least most of my adult life, since 19 years old. And so if you don't know how to do that, how do you measure somebody who's loving? How do you measure? Ask AI. Dive in, ask it. How do I measure? It will give you a pretty darn good answer on how that works. And I'm going to put another couple of shameless plugs back in. Of course, one, follow Rich. Guys, you've got somewhere between 10 and 50 more years of Rich, on planet Earth. We'll see how technology.
Ooh, I don't think we're going 50.
Right. It may not.
If I can add something, because it sounds a little bit like that. I think when you are training people, and again, most of my people came out of the field. They're blue collar workers, which incidentally, we've been looking for blue collar workers for 20 years or 30 years. All of a sudden, going into the trades is a hot item. And what I'm about to say is going to become even more important. You have to train people the way they learn. So if I take one of the reasons that Extreme Ownership is such a valuable book for the people I train is that the way it's written is it has 12 leadership principles. They take a principle, they illustrate it with a combat example, and they illustrate it with a business example, because they're now business consultants. And so every principle gets explained 3 different ways, and it's relatively bite-sized pieces. In my book, it's 35 principles, and they take 2.5 pages each in the book. That's the way I learn. It's the way the people that I train learn. And if I give them a John Maxwell book to read and then want to talk about it, they're never going to get started, because it's great stuff. The information's fantastic, but it's not the way my audience learns. And so you have to train people the way they learn.
Ooh, this is Aspire, my friends. And again, how many people out there, when their grandfather passes away, regrets and says, I wish I'd spent more time. My grandpa, I wish I had taken the time. Guys, you got a grandpa and Rich Ashton. Right. It's time to leverage the opportunity. He's got a website out there that's growingyourown.net. He's got a book out there as well. But my friends, get past the fear, dive into the bravery, and be valiant enough to just reach out and say, Rich, here's my scenario. Here's what I want to learn. Try to soak up like a sponge everything that you can from this man. And I would say do the exact same thing with ai.firstclassbusiness.io and what we're building. Rich, you're on to another very important point, and that's as leaders, we need to come in tune with what helps people learn best. And there are lots of aspects of that. Guys, I'm going to show you a couple of realities that you can apply to your own situations right now based on what we're building at First Class Business. And so, for instance, this little card right here, don't take it at face value. There's a very important psychological principle behind why we put it like this. We could have easily revealed the answer, but if people don't discover what they're learning as they go, they will take it for granted. And so we put specifically question, how do you know you're growing as a leader? So somebody has to think through, I haven't really thought about that before. And now they click on it. And if the answer is sound and solid based on what they now know they learned it here. Well, 90 leadership cycles, practice, measure, repeat, just like an exercise where you can see your muscles after 90 days of commitment to it. The same is true for leadership. It's got to be practiced. Now, if I move over here, this calculator, the direct conversion profit maximization formula, this used to be a spreadsheet. Most people would puke if they saw a spreadsheet like this. And most people probably puke if they saw this too. But if we can create this to where it's fun enough to where people can start to play around with it and realize okay, I don't want to lose money in business. And we can put little things like tool tips in here that help people understand, no, I'm not going to be able to train every kindergartner on how to use this type of a tool. But I can tell you what, I can train the marketers and advertisers who have no idea how this works, and they should know how it works. And I can train the entrepreneurs as well on how to understand and forecast and diagnose their profitability. But back to Rich's point, we need to make sure that what we're teaching people is as consumable as possible if we're going to make a difference. And I didn't build that tool. Claude AI built that tool with my guidance of hey, I need this to be as simple and as easy as possible for people to get, because it took me 5 years to understand this. I need people to be able to understand this in 5 minutes, maybe 50 minutes max. And so we have so much at our disposal right now, leaders, not just visionaries, into figuring out, all right, how can I connect with the people that I'm teaching? How can I help them? And I'll go back to your definition, Rich. As an effective leader, how can I have the ability to influence my team members in a way that enhances their experience? If you can become a master at that, you can become an extremely valuable leader of pretty much any organization in the world. So Rich, that's my mic drop moment. I'll give you yours. If this is your last chance ever to provide wisdom, counsel to people who are rising up as leaders or those who support them, what would the final counsel be?
Really connect with people. You can empower people in amazing ways if they trust you and if you have their best interests in mind.
I'm going to take that to heart this week. That's going to be my number one goal moving forward for at least a week. Somebody's got to really inspire me to knock me off my rocker with that. But my friends, let's all lean in. How do we better connect with the people that we want to inspire and help? I can guarantee you that would have a very positive impact, and we can change the world doing that if we all spread the word and try to do just that. Rich, this has been an amazing opportunity. I appreciate everything that you've taught me on this process. Again, my friends, connect with Rich at growingyourown.net. Let's make the most of our visionary opportunities, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision.